Okay, thank you everybody for joining us today. This is the first of the KBA's newest. We haven't done this before, Law Student Discussion Group series. What you can do with your law degree. We're going to try to give you some real practical advice to take as you continue to navigate through law school. I'm Jonathan Guest. If you don't know, you've probably gotten plenty of emails from me over the course of time. I'm the membership coordinator, database admin here at the KBA, and I'm also the liaison for the law students. So I'm sure you're familiar with all the emails that I've been sending you. We're also joined here today by, this is actually, I'm sure you're all aware, this is the criminal law focus of the discussion series. We're joined here today by two kind of newer attorneys, one of them more so than the other, but we have Ariel Carter of the Knox County Public Defender Community Law Office. Ariel went to LMU Duncan School of Law. She was licensed in 2019, and she is currently active in the KBA's Access to Justice and Diversity Committees. We also have Zach Walden of Eldridge and Blakney PC here downtown. Zach went to the University of Alabama Law School, please forgive him, and he was licensed in 2016. He is also a very active member of the KBA, currently co-chair of the Barristers Constitution Day and School Outreach Committee. He's also involved in the mock trial that we have every year, and he's probably going to speak to you a little bit about that. Before we get going, though, if anyone has questions about absolutely anything, please feel free. If you're comfortable butting in and just verbally asking your question, feel free. If not, if you'd rather just type it into the chat box, I'll be monitoring that and try to work it into the program. So any and all questions would help. That would be lovely. It would help drive the program along. But okay, so first, I just kind of want to let Ariel and Zach kind of introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Ariel. Give us a background on what you're currently doing and kind of more specifics what you're doing in your area of law.
Yeah, so I'm at the Knoxville Public Defender's Office. When you first start off, essentially you're starting off in General Sessions Court. And so that means that I am mainly handling misdemeanors, DUIs, and like a couple felony cases right now. So I'm gonna be like completely doing nothing but felony court and doing probably a lot more trials than I am doing right now. That's my main focus. We have a lot of volume since we get a lot of cases at this point.
Cool. All right. And what about you, Zach?
Sure. I'm Zach, and I did go to the University of Alabama School of Law, which, our football team did win a national championship this year, Jonathan. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But enjoy your
What else is new?
Moving on from that, I've been at Eldridge and Blakney for, I guess, a little over 4 years now. My practice is primarily criminal, but a little more varied because I have an opportunity to go to state court kind of throughout some of the surrounding counties as well as Knox County, as well as federal court, and have had the opportunity to try cases in state and federal court, and randomly a murder case in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. If you ever have an opportunity to try a case in the Commonwealth, don't. So the nice thing about criminal law is it's never, ever a boring day. Even through the pandemic, we don't really have a lot of boring days. So look forward to whatever questions you all have. Feel free to turn your cameras on, by the way, because it makes it a little more personable in this lack of personable world we're currently in. So otherwise, it feels like we're just talking to our own computer screens. It feels weird.
Thanks, everyone. That was
actually people there. Good.
Wow, yeah, that's great. Awesome. So I guess what I kind of first want you all to talk about was we'll start with you again, Ariel. When you were entering into law school, did you have an idea about what areas of practice you were going to enter into, and kind of how you came to that conclusion before as you finished up?
So when I first came into law school, I was convinced I was going to be a family law attorney, and that's like I did all my externships, and just was I was determined that's where I was going to end up whenever I graduated. And then I graduated in December 2018, and the summer that I had before my second semester, my third L year, I decided I was going to try to expand my horizons a little bit by trying to get some education and some experience in a different field. And I kind of always liked criminal law and criminal procedure classes, and I was like, I'm okay at it. I'm pretty good at it, and I like the cases. They seem fun. And the CLO actually came to the law school at LMU, and they did a presentation about the summer externship. And then I applied and I got in, and then I just like fell in love with the work. And I just was like, nope, forget family law. This is not gonna be a thing anymore. And I just like focused 110% on criminal law. And that's just essentially how I got started. I was a summer extern, then I was I guess an intern during the school semester. And I just kind of just stayed around like during the bar a little bit. And then I had a chance to interview with the staff, and then that's about it. I've only been there for about 2 years now. And it was like straight out of law school.
Awesome. Same question to you, Zach. What were your expectations heading into law school, and did you expect to do criminal law, and how did that kind of develop?
I think I knew I wanted to do criminal law, but I really at that point thought that I wanted to be a prosecutor, and most of my internship experience focused on that. I had an opportunity to spend some time in both summers of law school in the 8th Judicial District with their district attorney's office, like up in Campbell, Claiborne, Scott County kind of area, which was a really beneficial experience. If you have an opportunity, especially between your 2L and 3L year, to work for a DA or a public defender, or the federal equivalents of those, you should do it, because you get to actually practice. If you come work for like a private criminal defense firm, we'll take you to court and let you meet people and watch stuff, but you can't practice. But having the opportunity to actually have hearings while I was still a law student was super valuable. I also did an internship for Judge Greer, who was sitting at the Eastern District in Greenville at the time, as well as the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Knoxville. So most of my internships were geared more towards prosecution. I did participate in my law school's criminal defense clinic my 3L year. But even after law school, I thought I wanted to be a prosecutor. I ended up getting a job as a defense attorney, and I think that was a good thing, because I would have been a terrible prosecutor, and I didn't know that at the time. So I'm glad I know that now. If you think that you have a strong sense of justice and right and wrong, but you've never worked with people on the other side of the justice system, you should probably do that, or you might be a pretty terrible prosecutor that has no empathy and doesn't use the power of prosecutorial discretion in a very appropriate way.
Cool. Awesome. So when you were, I guess, when you were getting out of law school and you kind of determined what you were kind of the avenues you were going to pursue, you've kind of focused in on criminal law. What, given your expectations heading into it, what has been similar to what you expected, and what has been different to what you expected, and what would you have liked to have prepared for, I guess? Ariel, we'll start with you again.
So since I was an extern, like through the summer, I got like a really immersive kind of experience. I was, like Zach was saying, I was able to practice. My supervisor was very like, let me just throw you into the deep end. And he let me do like a hearing within like a month of me being there. It's like a 2-month program. And I was just like, I don't know, I just had to like kind of go with the flow a lot faster than in law school. That was like a real concern that I had when I first went into the field, was that like I was scared I had to like think on my feet like really quickly. Just general sessions as a whole is kind of like chaotic in its own nature. So it's kind of like a lot of people running around, going up to different places. You don't know where the DAs are, especially when you first start out. So it's just kind of like getting a handle on the chaos, and like honestly within like a couple of weeks you get used to it. And like now I just don't know how to like deal with anything without the chaos and like the ever-changingness of general sessions court. So that's what I wasn't expecting when I first started. I thought it was going to be kind of like, Your Honor, we need to do State versus Jones, and this is like why my like, you know, position should win, is more or less like more personable negotiations than as formal as I thought it was going to be.
Awesome. What about you, Zach?
Yeah, General Sessions Court, it is the ER of the legal system. You walk in during normal times and there's, 150 people. Half of them don't know who their lawyer is. I mean, it is pure chaos. So if you have the opportunity while you're in law school, like both Ariel and I did, to do an internship where you get to spend some time really working through General Sessions Court, that is going to really help your expectations of what practice is going to be like. And in the criminal field. Otherwise, you're not dealing with things one at a time, especially if you have a lot of general sessions court practice. In federal court, you are. If your case is set in federal court for 11 o'clock on Thursday, you're going to walk in, the prosecutor is there to prosecute only your case. There's not going to be other defense attorneys there unless they're for co-defendants. There's no other cases on the docket. That moment is dedicated for you. That is not true, especially in the general sessions court, in the state court system. So you've got to really walk and chew bubblegum at the same time, because you may be tracking down a DA. You happen to see the DA you've been looking for on another case, and you got to switch cases kind of midstream in your head. So it can definitely be a very quick paced practice, especially if you do a lot of general sessions work.
Awesome. So we have our first student submitted question. I'll just go ahead and jump into it. So what advice would each of you give to a student to boost their confidence about trial advocacy and public speaking? So Ariel, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so that's like one of the things I hate the most. I just hated public speaking. That was like, they said like, hey, you speak in this class, and I'm like, no, thank you. And I would try to avoid it as much as possible. I think just constantly doing practice at it. Like I did actually do trial advocacy while I was in law school. And then through that, I was able to join mock trial. And the more comfortable I got, kind of just like knowing the mechanics of like how to speak in court. And like when I did mock trial, just like the mechanics of doing a trial, like from the openings to closing and everything in between, that was incredibly helpful for me. I had, when I was an extern, my supervisor, like I said, he was very like, you do this, experience all the things. And so he kind of pushed me, like not like overbearingly, but he pushed me like in a really healthy way to kind of be like, hey, the more you do this, the more you get comfortable with it. Like the first time I spoke in front of the judge, I'm sure I wasn't like loud enough. I'm sure I stumbled over my words. Now I'm just like, judge, like this is what the situation is. And like, I can just kind of do things like off the top of my head at this point, where I wasn't able to do that when I first started. And that's just kind of getting used to things over time.
Really got to learn the procedures, huh? Yeah.
I would say in response to that question, if it makes you feel better, it is you're not going to start as a criminal lawyer and your first day have to give an opening statement in a capital murder case. The first things that you're going to be handling are really routine matters, and a lot of the speaking you're going to be doing is just announcing a plea, announcing a future court date. So you're going to have a lot of opportunities where your public speaking is limited to just really informing the judge of a date or something super routine. And a lot of things, especially when there's just a judge, it's certainly powerful to be persuasive, but a lot of the stuff you're going to do, especially early on that relates to public speaking, if you are not a good public speaker, it is not going to hurt your client. If you're telling the judge, I would like to continue this hearing, the fact that you don't speak loudly or aren't making great eye contact that morning is not going to hurt your client in any way. So you're going to have a chance to build that confidence through some routine things in a way that if you mess up or aren't very good, it's not really going to hurt anything. Is that fair, Ariel?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, my first announcement was just like, this case is getting dismissed. And I was like incredibly nervous about that.
Yeah, it's terrifying. And if she stuttered all over her words, that case was still going to get dismissed. Same outcomes, client's still getting the same thing. So you're going to work your way up to that Matlock moment. I feel like I'm dating myself because I'm only 29. I've not even seen an episode of Matlock, but I'm still using that reference.
Yeah, that's great. A couple more student questions in, so that's great. Everybody keep those coming, please. So this is a question specifically for you, Ariel. Did you juggle classes at the same time you were working at the CLO as an intern? And if so, can you describe that?
Yes, so during the internship, which was like just during the school semester, it was like my last semester as like a actual law student. So I didn't have like as many classes that like were test heavy. But essentially for the CLO, they kind of work around your schedule a lot more during the school semester. And it's like, if I can only come in like on a Tuesday, then that's the day that I come in. You get your hours that you need to. I think I was taking an externship class so that I could just be there and like getting credit that could help me graduate. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of stressful a little bit because the public defender's office does have a large amount of cases. But the good thing about them is that when I was an intern versus an extern, they kind of like backed off a little bit on as much that I was doing. So I was doing like mainly doing like research on like cases that like attorneys needed help on like on a specific issue. And then I would occasionally go to court if I had the time. So it wasn't like a pressure situation for them. They pretty much like focus on school. You're in law school to like graduate, not to just be our extern. So.
Great. All right. So next question in is being in a field that, well, this is for both of you. So being in a field that seems so serious and chaotic, do you feel that you have a pretty good work-life balance? We'll start with you again, Ariel.
I'm not gonna lie, I really struggle with my work-life balance. I always feel like there's something that I always have to do. When I go to bed, I'm like, oh, what about that like motion I was supposed to like write up, or like I was supposed to call this client? And, like, but I'm working on it like now to get better, and it's like 2 years in, and I'm like just now starting to work on getting a better work-life balance. But I think definitely having those boundaries of like where you can stop like safely without like putting your clients in a position that you want to be prepared for. I think I'm like learning still. Yeah, it's a learning curve right now.
It's a skill that you develop, and it's a skill you're developing now. I mean, I think the vast majority of law students don't necessarily have healthy work-life balances. Is that fair? So, these are skills that you can start learning now. You can only do so much in a day, and in just about any job in the legal profession, there's always one more thing you could be doing at whatever time you choose to go home. So you just need to look at your day, look at your week, look at your month, figure out what needs to be done that day. If you have the ability to emotionally compartmentalize, that is incredibly helpful in the criminal defense field, because you do see things that are sad. You do have a lot of empathy for your clients. So you're doing your clients no good if you're waking up at 2 a.m. and just worrying about them. Like that's not going to help anybody. And if you're tired because you've been up half the night just worried about what's about to happen or what just happened, that's going to hurt your client because you're tired and you need to be on your game. So that is a skill set that I think law students need to learn, and most lawyers need to learn is how to make sure you're managing the best of your day, realizing that there is always going to be one more thing to do, and learning how to turn that off at the appropriate time when you go home. So that's tough, and that's more of a personal thing than this set of lawyers are better at it than this set of lawyers. What criminal defense lawyers are better at than most of the lawyers is dark humor.
Yeah, that's for sure. I guess a follow-up to that question from the same person at least was, we'll start with you, Ariel. What do you see the next steps are for your career and from the position that you are in now?
Well, I think like just like case-wise, my next steps will be going to felony court, getting into like larger sentences. Right now, like the maximum that I'm dealing with is like someone dealing with jail for like 11 months, 29 days. So it's not like as high stakes as like a felony where people could be looking at like an attempted murder or like a first degree murder charge. So I don't have like that same pressure. Like, although I take everything seriously, like it's not the same like gravity in cases that I'm dealing with right now. That one, and then also just getting more trial experience. I was supposed to have trials this past year, so it kind of ruined all of my trial schedules. So that's like just kind of like readjusting with that. Going forward, I guess like within the office, just learning and being more comfortable in the field and trying to learn as much as I can. There's a couple like areas like DUI court that's like changing constantly, and kind of having to be on my game and like just kind of wanting to be amazing at that, and hopefully become like a supervisor one day and kind of make hiring decisions within the office is like my goal. But as a whole, the office, I just like love it. So I'll probably just like stay there for a while. Like career wise, I don't really anticipate leaving the office unless they like fire me or something. Like hopefully they don't, but like
I'm sure that's not in your career plan.
I was like, hopefully, like,
It's great to hear that you love your office. That's always good to hear. What about you, Zach?
So kind of being in the private firm world, you know, I what Ariel does every day is super valuable. We have great public defenders. You know, and if you hear that reputation of I don't want one of those free lawyers, not true. They're great attorneys in that office. I know a lot of them. Frankly, I worked on an appeal recently, so my first call was to Jonathan Harwell in that office because he's super smart. But I personally don't have desire to move to the government side and have that type of case volume. So on the private side, your next steps are usually you make partner at a firm, or you a lot of people in the criminal defense world, if they've kind of always done the private practice thing and they don't want to be partner where they are, they start their own, or they run for judge or run for some of those opportunities.
Cool. That's actually a good segue into, we have some students submitted some questions through the registration process, and then there's a couple in the chat too, but a couple of them kind of run together with what you all were just talking about. So I'll just kind of ask this in one fell swoop. So why criminal law, and more specifically, why public sector or private sector? And then what are the differences that are there between the experience that you get in the private defense versus public defense work? And do you think having experience in both is helpful? We'll start with you, Ariel. Right.
I may have to ask you to repeat a couple of those subs.
It's basically why criminal law, like sector versus private sector. Why did you choose what you chose? And then is it valuable to have experience in both?
Yeah. So I'm just gonna answer backwards a little bit. I think it's very important to have as much experience as possible when deciding what you want to do. I think law school is a great opportunity to learn what you love and then also what you don't like. Because once you get out there and you're applying for jobs, if you get into workspace and you're oh my gosh, I hate it here, but I also need this money, it's kind of a hard place to balance and figure out what you exactly want. Why I chose criminal law, I just love it. I think it's very exciting. I think every day is something new. I get a chance to learn a lot of different skills. I work on my writing, my oral advocacy, which, like I said before, when I first started was probably horrible because I was just really nervous to say the wrong thing at all times. And I think there's another question that I missed.
Just kind of there's comparing private and public sectors and the experience, of course, but what kind of, I think you answered it. What made you specifically choose the public sector?
Yeah, I don't really have much experience with the private sector as far as criminal law goes. Like I said, all of my experience before this was family law. And my experience with that was, it was still a good experience, but it was a lot. Find your clients. My clients, I just got them. It just is what it is. They kind of come to me. They come to the public defenders first, and then if we can't take them due to a conflict, then we put it on an appointed attorney. There's a list there, and they get it if we can't take it. But we have a really high volume, which I think is different from probably the private sector. I don't have that experience because I've just kind of been thrown in, and they're just here's some cases. And then it just keeps on adding over time. So
sure thing. What about you, Zach? Let me know if you need me to repeat any of that convoluted question.
If we want to put them in the big chat so I can see them, because it's not that the question is confusing, it's just that
Oh, everybody has been direct messaging me. Everybody, if you want to put it in the public chat, feel free to do that. Sorry, I didn't.
I'm just easily distracted. Right. I would say the biggest difference in public versus private is, I don't want to say you get to choose what you do, because you certainly don't choose who picks up and calls you, but it's a little different. There's a business aspect to this job that doesn't really exist on the public side, right? Because public defenders are paid a salary. Private practice, you're charging your clients as they come in the door, and it's not a set schedule. It's a small business essentially. So you have the opportunity to vary your practice or narrow your practice based on your skill set or what you want to do. My practice is fairly broad. I've tried federal healthcare fraud cases, but I also, represent my fair share of drunk college students, which are the funniest people to represent because they'll get caught with a little bit of weed. They all think they're going to prison forever, and they're not. They're going to do some community service and get it dismissed. But usually the body camera videos are particularly funny when they're drunk. So, you can really vary your practice from state court to federal court. Trying violent felony crimes versus white collar. You can really specialize a lot in DUI. So you can kind of make your own way in private practice and figure out which area of criminal law you're particularly good at or particularly enjoy, and make your brand based on that. And then it can be more or less lucrative depending on how good you are at the business part of it.
Good, like that. So this is another question that's specifically for you again, Ariel. Are there ever any opportunities for rising 2Ls to have summer internships with the public defender's office, or do they tend to favor rising 3Ls?
Oh yeah, the preference is actually 2Ls, like rising 2Ls. The preference is people who have completed at least half their law school credits, and that's so they can qualify for like a limited practice license. That's essentially what I did, and you can practice, and that way you can announce things to the court. We still like have like people who are like 1Ls, and I think I was like the weird 3L who like was just there because I had transferred in. It was kind of weird, but I think the preference is just 2Ls, just because you can do a lot more things as far as being in court, and you can like learn like doing a lot more. You're still encouraged to do it if you were a 1L as well, but you won't probably be like able to announce anything. You'll just kind of be more or less researching and then kind of following an attorney around during your 1L year. That's about it.
Great advice. Okay, so let's see, moving on, let's see. I guess for both of you, let's see, looking back, is there anything that you regret not doing or planning for while in law school that would have better prepared you for your practice in criminal law? We'll start with you, Ariel, or Zach, whichever one. Looks like you're both pondering right now. There may not be an answer.
For me,
you may be like, I nailed it. Everything I did was perfect.
Oh no. No, like, I'm sure. No, it's just like law school. I was like in my head, I'm like after the bar, I'm just like I forgot everything that I.
There's like large gaps of time that I just have no memory for.
Yeah, like I know I went there, like but past that, I'm just like, what?
I've got the degree on the wall. I know I'm at. I would say for me, like I don't know. I just didn't know what I was doing when I was in law school. I didn't have any family members that were attorneys. I didn't have mentors early on outside of professors who were certainly great resources, but I went to law school out of state, so they weren't necessarily people that were plugged into the bar in East Tennessee. So I would say if I had done anything differently, I would have early on sought out mentors in the area, both geographic area and practice area that I wanted to go into. And meet as many people as possible. So when we have these KBA functions and you get all those emails about barristers meetings, go to those because there's going to be young lawyers there that you can talk to and meet people, and they may say, hey, we might be hiring some interns this summer, or they may know where jobs are, and they may not, but they're people that you'll end up practicing with on the other side of cases or something. It's good to kind of know those personalities.
I think I would have tried more externships. When I went into like school, I think I was just so focused on like one avenue that I didn't like give myself a chance to like explore as much. So I think I would go back and probably change that. Probably take more classes where I get more comfortable speaking in front of people. I think I didn't really focus on that until like the end of my time. Like, so like end of 2L year, definitely my 3 year, I was like taking more classes and like seminars that got me in front of people and talking more. But if I had started earlier, maybe I'd been a little bit more comfortable with that. I do agree with Zach as far as like wherever you want to practice, getting to know people. Sometimes it's just like who you know, because realistically, if like I see your name and I'm like, oh, I've met them a couple of times at like, events, I know they're nice, that they seem nice. I think, I'll tell them about like, a job opportunity or an externship or something like that. And kind of just like that networking is definitely very helpful. I definitely struggle with it. But if you guys need anything, you can always reach out to me. That's fine.
Absolutely. Yeah, we just from the KBA's perspective, I can actually shed some light on this. This is what we think about frequently. Like especially when it comes to law students, we're constantly thinking about things that we can do for all of you that could in any way help you prepare or meet people or whatever it is. And all we can do is just encourage everybody to get as involved as you can, because it's going to only help you answer a lot of the questions you may have at the moment, because you're going to just meet people who, if you're talking to them, you're going to probably get some of those things you're worried about answered. But we have some more chat questions here, so that's great. But I'm going to try to knock out a couple more of the questions that were submitted in the registration process. So one of them was, what was the job search process like, and when, as a 3L, should I start to send out my resume? Before the bar, after passing the bar, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll start with you, Ariel.
I had like a weird experience. I kind of just like hung around until, and it's kind of like hinting that I wanted to work at the office like over and over again to like random people who worked there. I did my interview prior to me taking the bar. And I got the job before I had even gotten my results back. So I think that's a good time, just kind of like I'm anticipating taking the bar. From my office, they were really good at being like, hey, we'll help you out. I'm not sure if all public defenders offices do this, but for me, they were willing to pay my expenses for like the bar prep program that I went to. I did Barbary, but like my school had like worked it into the tuition, so it didn't actually come out of pocket. But like they were willing to do that at least to help me succeed. And they trained me and did everything while I was waiting on my bar results. So that was just like my experience. I know other people who wait until after they have the bar results, like here, I can actually practice, and that's fine too. I think we did a lot of our partnership is through this program called Gideon's Promise. And essentially they're just like trying to prepare public defenders to enter into the workforce, and they provide like funding and things like that. And that's probably where like at least a third of our attorneys came from, is Gideon's Promise program.
I would say, to answer that question, yes, send out your resume before the bar and after the bar. I would send it probably around graduation, maybe even a little bit before. And then I would probably send it in around the time that maybe right after I took the bar exam. And if I still don't have a job, I'm going to send it out again after I get my past results. The best advice I would give you is any place you're sending a resume to, pick up the phone, give them 3 or 4 days to have time to actually receive the resume in the mail, because lawyers still mail things. It's the strangest thing. We still use the post office. We still use fax machines. We're working on fax, but the post office is not going away. If you physically mail the letter, your cover letter and a resume, give it 3 or 4 days to get there, and pick up the phone and call that firm, ask for the managing partner or whoever you addressed it to, and say, hey, I just wanted to see if you had a chance to get my resume. Make them tell you no if they don't have any openings. And if they don't have any openings, say, well, I really appreciate you letting me know that. But, I'm trying to get my foot in the door wherever I can and learn more, learn as much as I can while I'm applying. Would you be willing to meet me for coffee or meet me for lunch? You know what that answer is going to be most of the time? It's probably going to be yes. And they may give you the names of, well, I've really enjoyed meeting with you. My firm doesn't have an opening, but if I were you, I would call this firm, or I would call the public defender's office because they may be looking for somebody, or I would call these people, and it's just like an endless game of tag where you're going to meet people. They're going to tell you other people to contact, email them their resume, call them. They still don't have jobs, but they'll go to lunch with you and give you more names. That's how I landed somewhere. I just did that until I landed. If you're going to send a resume, especially to a private firm, because they're going to rely on you to generate business, they need to know that you've got the initiative to pick up the phone and talk to somebody, because anybody can put a stamp on an envelope and send it to 50 places, but a lot of people are too intimidated to pick up that phone and call the managing partner, and they want to see that initiative, because they want to know that if somebody sends a contact form through your firm's website and says, hey, I got arrested for public intoxication on the strip, and I need a lawyer, that you're going to have the gumption to call them, talk them through their issue, and quote a fee.
I can't tell you, everybody, how good that advice was, just in general, for any line of work. So that was awesome, Zach. Okay, another question here. How do you handle the secondhand trauma of litigating criminal cases, and specifically violent crime? And we'll start with you, Ariel.
I think learning to compartmentalize a lot of the situation, kind of like looking at the facts just as the facts, and try like you're definitely gonna have like emotional reactions to certain things. And you're gonna initially you're gonna probably be like, oh man, I don't think I can handle this. And just kind of like working through that and like finding a way to like not let it consume you, but like focusing on other things, that are just looking at like the legal aspects of it. Like, hey, this like stop is like really, really bad. Let's focus on this part and kind of just like work the case like little by little. That helps me. And then also just like having an activity or like maybe like a group that you can just like kind of unwind with, that's like not law related at all. Like if you enjoy like going out and like playing pool or something, like just like doing that just like for your mental health, so you can like kind of recharge and you can be able to focus on the next case that you get.
Yeah, and there are cases that will live with you. They'll live with you, especially if you deal with any type of murder case, rape case, or a particularly long trial, or a trial where, sometimes the other side is just unnecessarily rough on you as opposing counsel. There are things that, yeah, you'll carry it. And she's absolutely right. The ability to compartmentalize is a great thing. And I know that not everyone can do that, but there will be cases that live with you. And what I think that most criminal defense attorneys do, and I still consider myself a new lawyer. I'm just on year 5, but I've seen myself doing this enough and been around experienced attorneys. I think for criminal lawyers, we turn our traumatic trials into war stories, and we love to tell them. Love to tell you about, the funniest thing that happened in a murder case, or some other gruesome thing. But we can tell some entertaining story, and I think that really helps you process it. Is because it's a way to talk about it, and I can sit here for much longer than the time we've allotted today, and just tell you stories about different cases that I have that were tough and had an emotional impact on me, that I can find something humorous or something interesting to look back on, and kind of process it that way. But it's like anything else. It's whatever works for you. You all have sat through seminars. They've warned you that lawyers have mental health problems, that lawyers have substance abuse problems. And if you let it get to you and you don't take care of yourself mentally and emotionally, you're going to have those problems too, especially in the criminal defense field, because it's tough, and you're going to have to deal with some crap. You're going to have to deal with victims' families that blame you as the attorney for what happened that you had nothing to do with because you weren't there. You've got to deal with some weird stuff. But as long as you learn what coping tools help you, you'll be able to cope. But war stories, that's how most of us do it.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you maybe later about maybe a war story or two, but okay, so
I'll tell you about the big belly defense.
Sounds good. I'll make note of that. So another question here. I don't know if you will necessarily speak to this, but how would you compare practicing in Knoxville to practicing in a bigger city like Nashville? And specifically, if you know, how would you compare working at the PD's office in Knoxville versus other cities?
I don't have like any direct knowledge. It's kind of just like based off friends that I have. Like I said, the Gideon's Promise program is essentially just like help new attorneys kind of navigate the criminal defense, public defender work. And so I have a lot of contacts in like pretty much every state at this point. As far as like Nashville, I do have some connections there, and they kind of talk about their dynamic. I think the same situations that we all kind of face is just like large like workload. Like every single one of us has to deal with that one. I think the structures, as far as like how people structure their like internal things, like supervisors and case like divisions are a little bit different. There are people who have the same experience level that I do, and they're like already doing like felony like trials at this point, and they started like 2 months in, and they're kind of just like handed some cases instead of kind of like baby stepped the way I feel like we do it a little bit. I know like Louisiana, any of the cities there, it's kind of like their own little world there. It doesn't compare at all to like Knoxville because like they have their own like system, and pretty much just like you just get what you get over there. But it seems like there's definitely varying work structures, and if you have the opportunity to like go to a city, if that's where you want to go to see how their structure is, I would suggest doing that. I know some of the bigger ones, they may have abilities to like offer stipends, like for summer externships, whereas like we don't have that ability at the Knox County Public Defender's Office. So I think just kind of like looking into that, researching people who work there. And if you guys need names of people who I know would probably be good resources to talk to you about, again, feel free to like reach out.
So,
I don't know the answer to that question. I'm sorry.
No worries. All right, so a couple more here that are kind of job specific. So speaking of summer internships, I have found that a lot of places are either not hiring interns this summer or are unsure at the moment. Do you have any advice on how to handle the potential gap in a resume as it relates to getting a job upon graduation?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think there's a lot of places that that aren't doing summer internships. There are a lot of offices downtown right now that are still working remotely or have gone remote off and on. Like I know my own firm has recently evaluated that a couple different times because we were John L. Simpson interned with us. If y'all go to UT, y'all know John L. So he was with us in the summer, and then at Christmas time he was coming back, and about the time that he was going to come spend his Christmas break with us, our office had a massive COVID outbreak, so we went remote for a while. So since we had that pre-existing relationship with him, I think he was here like a week, and then we worked remotely. So he was able to continue to do that, but we really did that more because we had already worked with him and probably wouldn't have started a new intern that way. And because for most law firms, the purpose of having an intern is we do want to mentor law students. We want to expose you to different areas of our practice and make it a good experience for you, and not just send you email assignments to do research, even though that's helpful as well. So I think most of us know that we can't provide a really good internship experience for you. And we also have to deal with, well, that's one more person that can bring COVID into our office and make us all go home for a month. No offense, but that's just what we're dealing with. So I think two things. One, I think every lawyer has been impacted by this pandemic in a very frustrating way. So I think that it is not going to be surprising to any potential employer if you have some employment gaps during 2020 and 2021. We all lived through that. We know that most places weren't hiring interns and there's not as many opportunities. Two, if you were being a little sneaky and you knew that a lot of places weren't hiring, or I think you made a good point, however you asked it, they were unsure at the moment. I think that's absolutely true. I think a lot of places are unsure. So don't be afraid to send that resume more than one time. So we see the cases are dipping down kind of right now. So maybe people might feel a little optimistic about summer. That might be a good time to start reaching out and say, hey, if y'all make decisions, I'd like to be considered. And then if they're still kind of dragging their feet, which is what I would expect a lot of people to do, come back to them in April. That's late to be hiring interns normally. But if firms haven't really firmly made decisions, they've also not made any hires. So you may be able to kind of talk them into it in April when they weren't really sure about it in January. So especially if no one else is really doing that, and they've already just kind of taken that no for an answer, and you're the one that went back and say, hey, I still want to come if you're able to provide an internship experience. I'm willing to do whatever, part-time, remote. Hit them up again. That's nothing wrong with that.
What about you,
So I don't think anyone's gonna like hold it against you about the potential gap, like of this like past year, this year, I think everyone's very understanding that COVID's like limited a lot of opportunities for especially like law students. I know that the Knox County, like our public defender's office we're still having externs and interns. I think we have a handful right now that are doing like while they're doing in school, but most of it's remote and it's completely different than what we would have if we didn't have this COVID situation kind of going on. I kind of feel bad because they don't get to experience everything. Like they get to see like virtual court, which is, still useful. You get to still see who the judges are, the DAs, how like people negotiate sort of. It's more like through email at this point and like calls, which is a lot harder than face-to-face. I think we can get a lot more done face-to-face than what we have now, but they're still like learning, they're still researching. We're still having our summer externs. Hopefully it'll be I think the insurance is like, will it be in person or remote? We're really, really hopeful that it'll be in person. But like last summer we had literally all remote situations and that was a lot harder. And I think the experience was a little bit like lost because it's mainly, like Zach was saying, like kind of emailing research assignments, which is still valuable, but not as valuable as being able to practice and see how court actually works. If you're concerned about it, I know a lot of people like in different states are still accepting like interns remotely. They can still like work at your house and like be like in like Baltimore, like working remotely, and that you can like earn experience, but I think the experience will just be kind of like a Zoom situation or emails or phone calls. So just like kind of taking that in consideration.
Yeah, that's good.
Want to do.
I can kind of speak toward.
Look, I know job searches, you worry, but don't feel like you're going to be uniquely punished because you were going through what everybody else in the country is going through.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I can also speak towards, I don't know if this is necessarily correlated with, quote unquote, things getting better or there's a vaccine rolling out or whatever the case is, but there have been more positions, these are attorney positions, mind you, available on the KBA's classifieds part of our website. Recently, there's, I think, more since I've been here for 3 or 4 years, and I don't think we've ever had double-digit attorney openings on our classifieds. We've got like 11 or 12 right now. So I don't know if that is correlated or if that's a sign of good things to come or anything like that. But I would also encourage students you can actually submit your resume to our classifieds part of our website and just have it there. Whenever there's firms out looking for help or whatever it may be, if that picks up over the course of the summer, they'll always be able to browse your resume and maybe reach out to you. So that's another avenue that you could take to shed a little light on that. Sorry,
and I'll say one more thing, primarily to stall time because I don't see any more questions coming in the box.
I've got one more, so we're good.
But I would just say a big part of firms not being sure is we don't really know what our summers look like as far as our practice. The Tennessee Supreme Court keeps extending the suspension of most in-person court proceedings, but at some point that's going to stop, and it may stop with this current order at the end of March. When court reopens, all of a sudden we've had all these cases backing up. We're suddenly going to be very busy. We might have, 2 or 3 jury trials set in one summer, whereas a firm like mine probably tries 2 or 3 jury trials a year. So we may suddenly, because of this, find ourselves in need of a little extra help. So I think that's another reason to, just kind of keep after firms that you're interested in working out.
Awesome. Yeah, great. That's great advice. So we have one more of the registration questions. So you guys may be able to answer this, but I'm not sure yet. But so the question is, the Knox County DA's office has said they are unsure of whether or not they will be accepting summer externs. Do you know of any other criminal law externship opportunities this summer that they could pursue, even in another county, perhaps? Well, we can start with you, Ariel, if there's just any advice there.
Off the top of my head, I don't know of anyone in externs, but give me a minute, I can probably find some people like who may know more than I would. Maybe like the smaller counties might be looking, like no one really travels out there all that much, unless you kind of live there. But off the top of my head, I don't really have an answer for that one.
I would say, because I have interned in some of the smaller counties, they may be a little more open to bringing people in. Knox County, their DA's office is a very formal program. They schedule lunch and learns. There's a lot of structure to what they do every summer. For the outlying counties, it's not quite as structured. They don't typically advertise, hey, we're looking for interns. It's more like they get resumes and they may be willing to bring you on. So I think that's a good idea, is to reach out to those, because one, they may be just a little more willing, because they're a little more rural, and they're not going to advertise typically. So you could just blindly email those DA's offices or mail them letters. I think tndagc.org will list all of the district attorney generals in East Tennessee. Just watch that. Some of these DAs, they cover 3, 4, 5 counties, so you probably only want to send one letter for all 5 counties. But I think that's actually a good idea. They may be a little more open to bringing somebody in.
Awesome. Well, we have a few more minutes here. We're kind of out of questions, but Zach, you were talking about a potentially funny war story you have. So I guess hit us with that and we'll get out of here.
Sure. So my very first trial was a sexual battery by an authority figure case in Union County, which, again, criminal lawyers, dark humor, that's typically not something normal people joke about. But this was a high school student accused the teacher of, I'm going to call it borderline inappropriate conduct. It's not something that anybody would really volunteer for if this girl was believable, but it was 3 counts. I think count 1, he supposedly brushed the hair out of her face, but kind of did it from here, but also in the middle of class, and no one saw it. So, it wasn't a very credible allegation. So I wasn't worried about count 1. Count 2 was also kind of similar, but count 3 was my problem at the jury trial. It was one of those situations where it's math class, so all the kids are working problems at the board lined up. There's 4 or 5 of them. And my client steps in and corrects her problem on the board, but pressed himself against her. And she claimed that she felt all of him. That was her words. And in closing argument, I asked my client to stand up, and I said, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we've been talking a lot about geometry class, so let's talk about shapes. My client is 5'10". He weighs 280 pounds. I respectfully submit that if he pressed himself up against her, she would not feel all of him, that is not possible. And the jury laughed and acquitted him in 22 minutes.
Belly defense, right?
That's the News Sentinel printed it as the big belly defense.
That's amazing. Ariel, do you have anything, any fun stories you want to tell before we get out of here?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
All right. I don't have any funny stories off the top of my head right now.
No worries at all. Yeah. Well, guys,
let me plug something before we leave. Tennessee High School Mock Trial. The Tennessee Bar Association Young Lawyers Division puts this on every year. It is a virtual competition this year, just like everything else. We need law students to volunteer to score rounds. You act as a juror, but really what you're doing is scoring how good the opening and closing arguments are, the direct and cross examinations, and the witnesses. It's all online. I don't even think you have to turn your camera on for it. So it is the weekend of February 19th.
Last weekend, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm going to put in the registration link into this email. We would love to have you all volunteer. And I'm
sure thing. All right, well, we'll let Zach do that. Thanks for doing my job for me, Zach. Everybody, we would encourage you to sign up there. Again, Ariel, Zach, thank you so much for joining us. I hope everybody was able to get some questions answered, get a little bit of extra knowledge as you move forward. We do have, there's another discussion group tomorrow. I think it's trial practice and personal injury. So we have a couple more in 2 weeks, and then a couple more the week after that before the end of February. So we have 5 more programs. I'd encourage everybody to just sit in and participate in as many of them as you can, even if it's something that you're just completely turned off by. You may pick up something, you never know. So again, Ariel, Zach, thank you so much for doing this for us. We really appreciate it. If anybody wants to reach out to them personally for any reason, I'm just going to speak for them. I'm sure they would be more than happy to hear from you, but you can reach out to me to get their contact info.
I'll just type my email into the little box too.
Yeah, you can do that too. So, if you want to reach out to me, feel free to do that. We can connect you with not just them, anybody that you would want to talk to. So, again, thank you both for doing this for us. And yeah, we'll hope to see you all around.